Welcome to Bite-Sized L&D, your quick, no-nonsense update on the latest in workplace learning. Today, we'll uncover how tech professionals are turning podcasts into powerful learning tools and explore the game-changing impact of vector embeddings on document search efficiency. All right, let's get straight into it.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Donna, and as always, I'm joined by my brilliant co-host, who's probably listening to 3 podcasts simultaneously right now.
You caught me, Donna. I was just finishing up the latest episode of Greek history while listening to a Swift programming tutorial. But I'm all yours now.
Multitasking at its finest. Today, we're exploring a topic that's actually quite important: how developers and tech professionals are utilizing podcasts as a serious learning tool. It's like podcast inception. We're doing a podcast about learning from podcasts.
Exactly, and it's something I'm really passionate about. Think about it. Our industry moves at lightning speed. There's always a new framework, a new methodology, or a new buzzword to learn. And traditional learning methods like reading documentation or taking courses just can't always keep up.
Right, and we all have these pockets of dead time in our day, commuting, doing dishes, going for a run, where our hands might be busy, but our brains are free.
100%. That's the beauty of podcast learning. It turns that dead time into productive time. And I actually have a perfect example of this from my own experience. A few months ago, I was listening to Innovation Pulse during my morning run.
Oh, I love that show. They do those deep dives into emerging tech, right?
That's the one. So they were doing this deep dive on large language models, and they started breaking down RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and comparing it to fine-tuning approaches. And I'd been struggling with understanding these concepts for weeks.
Wait, I need to hear this story. What happened?
So there I was, huffing and puffing up this hill, and the host starts explaining RAG as basically giving LLMs access to a knowledge base that wasn't in their original training data. And they use this brilliant analogy of a professor who knows general principles but needs to consult reference books for specific details.
That's actually a great way to think about it.
Right? And then they contrasted it with fine-tuning, which they described as teaching the professor new specialized knowledge, so they don't need the reference books for those specific topics. Something about the casual conversation format, the analogies, and hearing it explained in plain language while I wasn't staring at a screen just made it click in a way that reading technical papers never did.
It's amazing how that happens. I think there's something about the audio format that engages a different part of your brain. You're not getting caught up in the syntax or diagrams. You're just absorbing the core concepts.
Exactly. And the next day at work, we were having this meeting about improving our chatbot's accuracy, and I was able to clearly articulate why a RAG approach might work better than fine-tuning in our specific case. My team was looking at me like, when did you become an expert on this?
Oh, just during my morning run.
Precisely. But what about you, Donna? I know you're a podcast junkie too.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I've got a similar story. About 6 months ago, I was listening to AI Frontiers while doing my grocery shopping.
Multitasking queen.
You know it. Anyway, they had this episode about vector embeddings in semantic search, and they were discussing how companies were implementing this to make their internal knowledge bases actually useful instead of the black holes they usually are.
Oh man. Internal knowledge bases. The place where information goes to die. Am I right?
Exactly! So at my company, we had this massive documentation system with years of project notes, troubleshooting guides, customer insights, but finding anything specific was a nightmare. The search function was basically just keyword matching, so unless you knew the exact terms used in the document, good luck finding anything.
The classic you need to already know what you're looking for to find it paradox.
Precisely! So in this podcast, they were explaining how vector embeddings work, converting text into these mathematical representations that capture meaning, not just keywords. And they were talking about how implementing this kind of semantic search had reduced the time people spent searching for information by like 70% at some companies.
That significant productivity gain.
Huge! And what struck me was how they broke down the implementation process. It wasn't this massive, complex project they made it sound like. They laid out this step-by-step approach that seemed totally doable.
So, what did you do with this newfound knowledge?
I spent that weekend digging deeper. Then Monday morning, I pitched it to my team. 3 weeks later, we had a proof of concept running using open source embedding models. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it transformed how we work. People were finding relevant documentation they didn't even know existed.
That's the dream. And you introduced this innovation to your entire company based on something you heard while picking out produce.
Between the cereal aisle and dairy section, to be precise. But that's exactly my point. I would never have set aside time to research semantic search solutions on my own. It wasn't a known problem I was trying to solve. It was an opportunity I wouldn't have recognized without that passive learning.
I think that's a key insight. Podcasts aren't just teaching us things we're actively trying to learn. They're exposing us to solutions for problems we didn't know could be solved.
Totally! It's like documentation tells you how something works, courses teach you specific skills, but podcasts often show you what's possible. They expand your sense of what questions you should even be asking.
I've also noticed that podcasts are particularly good for understanding the why behind technologies. Like, I can read about a new framework and learn the syntax, but podcasts often dive into the philosophy behind it, the problems it's trying to solve.
Yes! And you get to hear from the actual creators and practitioners. I love when they share the messy reality of implementing something, not just the polished success story.
The war stories are the best. Like, here's how this brilliant approach completely failed the first 3 times we tried it.
Those are the episodes I bookmark. But you know what I'm curious about? Do you have any strategies for actually retaining what you learn from podcasts? Because I find that's the challenge sometimes.
That's a great question. For me, it's about active engagement. If I hear something really insightful, I'll pause and voice record a quick note to myself. Then later, I'll compile these into what I call my podcast knowledge base.
Ooh, I like that. I've started something similar. I have a Notion page called Podcast Gems, where I dump interesting ideas. But honestly, sometimes I just let the concepts percolate, and I'm amazed at how they resurface when I'm facing a relevant problem.
It's like planting seeds in your subconscious, and I think there's value in that more passive absorption too. Not everything needs to be immediately actioned.
Absolutely. And I've found that explaining concepts I've learned to others really helps cement my understanding. Like after that semantic search episode, I found myself explaining vector embeddings to our intern, and in the process, I realized I understood it better than I thought.
The classic learn by teaching approach. You know, we should probably also acknowledge that not all tech podcasts are created equal. Some are just surface level discussions that don't really teach you anything substantial.
That's true. I've definitely listened to episodes where I finish and think, what did I actually learn? Do you have criteria for which shows are worth your limited listening time?
I look for shows with practitioners, people who are actually building and implementing the technology, not just talking about it theoretically. And I love shows that include code examples or implementation details, even if I'm just listening and not seeing the code.
That makes sense. I tend to gravitate toward shows with good storytelling. Technical concepts stick better for me when they're wrapped in a narrative about how a real problem was solved.
And let's be honest, the host's voice matters. I've abandoned technically excellent podcasts because the monotone delivery was putting me to sleep during my commute, which is slightly dangerous.
Safety first. That's why we try to keep things lively here.
Speaking of which, we should probably start wrapping up. Any final thoughts on podcast learning for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is to be intentional about incorporating podcast learning into your professional development strategy. Don't just think of it as entertainment or background noise. These are legitimate learning opportunities that fit into the cracks of your day.
And maybe experiment with different types of content for different activities. I find that interview-style shows work well for my commute, while deeper technical episodes are better for focused listening while going for a walk.
That's a great tip. And for our listeners who haven't dipped their toes into tech podcasts yet, start with topics you're already working with or interested in. The familiar context will help you absorb the new insights more easily.
Absolutely, and don't be afraid to go outside your immediate specialty. Some of my best ideas have come from podcasts about adjacent technologies or even entirely different fields.
Interdisciplinary learning for the win! Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, your commute, your workout, or even your dishwashing time can be your personal learning lab. Make those moments count.
And if you've had your own aha moment from listening to podcasts, we'd love to hear about it. Drop us a note at Tech Pulsey Podcast, or tweet us, a Tech Pulse Pod.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. This is Donna,
And Yakov Lasker,
and you've been listening to Tech Pulse. Until next time, keep learning and keep building amazing things.
that's a wrap for today's podcast. We explored how tech professionals transform dead time into learning opportunities with podcasts and shared insights on the power of RAG, fine-tuning, and vector embeddings in enhancing work efficiency. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues so they can also stay updated on the latest news and gain powerful insights. Stay tuned for more updates.